Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, March 11th meeting of the Comox Valley Sewage Commission. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we're meeting on the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. And I'd like to congratulate the Comox Nation for their successful treaty votes this past weekend. I know that we all wish them the very best as they move forward with the work of implementation. I'd like to acknowledge the directors and staff here in the room today and welcome Mayor Minions here as an alternate Comox director. And we have Director Cole Hamilton joining us online along with other staff. So we'll start by dealing with the resolution status report dated March 2025. A motion for receipt, please. Moved by McCollum, seconded by Swift. Any questions or comments? Anyone opposed to receipt? That's carried. Item 1 under reports, the Sewage Management Advisory Committee minutes from February 20th. Motion for receipt, please. Moved by McCollum, seconded by Swift. Questions or comments? Anyone opposed? That too is carried. Item number 2, the Comox Valley Water Pollution Control Center Site Master Plan Finalization and Wet Weather Treatment Option. A report dated February 21st. A motion for receipt, please. Moved by Swift, seconded by Minions. And thanks for that. And we'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon to the Commission. Chris LaRose is our Senior Manager of Water and Wastewater Services, and Chris has I think a brief introduction, and then we have a presenter on the line as well. So Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, James, and through the chair, good afternoon, everyone. As you're aware, we've been working over the past year and a bit with our third-party process expert, Dr. Glenn Dagger, and the team at Corolla Engineering to develop a site master plan for the Comox Valley Water Pollution Control Center site. So the site master plan will lay out the approach and the sequencing for upgrades required at the treatment plant to meet the objectives set out in the Stage 2 liquid waste management planning process. So the site master plan is a key input and is required by the province to be included in the Stage 3 plan. Once finalized, it will also allow the Corolla team to proceed with the detailed design of the upgrades to be authorized by the approved LWMP, which requires Class B cost estimates and a fairly advanced level of design prior to submission. Over the past months, the project team have converged on a proposed approach for meeting those treatment objectives at the plant, which is a bit of a hybrid of the treatment options that were assessed through the Stage 2 plan. So Piero Galvano is the Corolla Engineering team lead, and he's here with us virtually today to help walk us through the analysis that him and his team have completed. And then we'll both be available to answer questions about the recommended path forward, including the next steps as far as they relate to the LWMP. So over to you, Piero.
Okay, I'll put up my presentation.
Your volume is quite low. I'm not sure if you can adjust that at all.
Okay, I think, shoot. Let me just spend a moment. Better?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, let's see if I can find, there we go. You're able to see that?
Still on the agenda.
No?
If you can try again, please, Pierre.
You see, yep. Is that better?
There we go.
Good.
Thanks.
Okay, good. Excellent. Thanks for having me and the opportunity to present. I'm not sure if your protocols allow for questions through the presentation, but I'm open to that. But I'll let you kind of whatever approach that you want to take. It's good.
Sure. We'll jump in if there are any questions, and if not,
okay,
we'll
good.
save them till the end. Thanks.
Okay, excellent. All right. So as Chris mentioned, the point of the analysis, the objective was to go into some detail to develop to investigate the pros and cons of a wet weather treatment approach for the Comox Valley Water Pollution Control Center, and really the motivation came out of this for considering an alternative. It came out of the motivation to minimize cost to sewer users while continuing to meet effluent quality standards. So as a preamble, what I wanted to do was just have a few slides that I would like to use to try and illustrate the problem that we're trying to resolve, and why we think in the end that the hybrid approach is the best for the wastewater treatment plant. So this is dry weather wastewater flow. This is how a wastewater, right? So this is the wastewater that's generated by the community. This occurs through a period in 2023 through the summertime when there is no rain or groundwater influences. So it's just wastewater, and it's a very regular pattern, and it's very common to treatment plants without a wet weather issue. So this is what's known as the average dry weather flow, and it becomes the reference in the subsequent slides for how we relate the wet weather. We're comparing it to the average dry weather flow. So when you do have a rainwater or a snow melt event, leaks into the collection system, and we start to get significant increases in flow. So what I've done is plotted the dry weather flow in the lighter peach color, and then this is the actual data from 2022 when you got some substantial storm events come through, and you see the inflow infiltration increase substantially. And one of the features is that it dilutes the wastewater. And the second feature is that the peak flows those peak hourly flows can increase to more than 4 times the average dry weather flow. So a substantial increase and very increase in flow, but also variability. And so this is all flow that the wastewater treatment plant needs to deal with. And so this chart is kind of the full year of flow to the plant in 2023. So what I wanted to illustrate here is one that the blue line indicates what is the regulatory definition of wet weather flow. So 2 times average dry weather flow. And what I wanted to illustrate here was that most of the flow is below that 2 times average dry weather flow threshold, so is not wet weather. And then the second feature is that the flows, those wet weather flows occur mostly in the winter time, but also in the fall and spring period. And they're intermittent. So again, that becomes a challenge at the treatment plant to deal with these sudden occurrences of wet weather. So what we wanted to do here was just to kind of, this observation that most of the flow into the plant is below the wet weather threshold. So we calculated how much of that volume actually represents wet weather, and historically, well, at least over the last 5 years, less than 2.5% of the annual inflow meets that wet weather criterion of 2 times average dry weather flow. So it's a relatively small volume of flow that's wet weather. However, it has an outsized influence on the infrastructure, on the upgrades of the treatment process. So the core of the treatment process is this primary clarifier, bioreactor, secondary clarifier train, and the primary clarifiers and secondary clarifiers are sized based on peak flows. So that 2.5% is really driving the upgrade requirements for primary clarifiers and for secondary clarifiers. And then furthermore, I wanted to kind of highlight the fact that the wet weather dilutes the wastewater. So what's coming into the plant during that wet weather period is low concentration, but the design of the system is for a much higher concentration of wastewater. So the full potential of the treatment process is not being utilized during a wet weather event. And so primary clarifiers, just a fact that primary and secondary clarifiers are large concrete tanks with complex piping and associated pumping. So they have a considerable cost when it comes to upgrading. So just as a final slide into the introduction, so you look at the aerial photograph of the plant. It's dominated by the secondary clarifiers, primary clarifiers, which are outlined in red, and then in between are the bioreactors. And the expectation is going into the future that the wet weather generated peak flows are expected to continue to grow with population as the collection system expands. That wet weather flow is also going to increase, and adding clarifier tanks is a perfectly logical approach to upgrades, and that's historically how the planning has been done, but it comes at a high cost. So what we want to do is kind of investigate some options that we think could be an alternative strategy for managing those peak flows, and could be more cost effective while meeting or exceeding the effluent quality objectives. And that was an important component of this. We want to bring forward options that do meet the that are the same or better in terms of performance when it comes to meeting the effluent quality objectives. So there are two options that we brought forward and to compare against the baseline option, which is to upgrade as conventional primary secondary treatment. So the first option is to add a chemically enhanced primary treatment to the baseline option, and then the second option is to do this SEPT, but also implement a wet weather treatment strategy. And I'll describe each of the two options in subsequent slides. But then ultimately what we wanted to do was develop staging plans for each of the three options, and then just do a comparison to see how that cash flow for the two alternatives compare against the baseline, and use that as a basis for assessing value, I guess. So under the baseline option, we're going to upgrade primary clarifiers, and then the biological, the bioreactor and secondary clarifiers, and we'll use we'll just base those on the loading as well as the peak flows. Under option 1, this is the chemically enhanced primary treatment. We're adding a coagulant to the primary clarifier, so we're not changing the structure of the primary clarifier. We're using the chemical to give it more capacity, and we think that you should be able to get at least 20% more capacity out of the primary clarifier. You're not changing the flow rates. You're just providing more ability for the primary clarifier to meet the settlement objective. So this photograph on the right just kind of illustrates what we're trying to do. So the chemical coagulant, which is the tube in the middle, is basically just a polymer that destabilizes the suspension of particles in the column. So it brings them together, causes them to agglomerate, and they just settle faster. So that's how we're able to achieve that 20% increase in capacity. And the other feature of this option is that we really only need that the chemically assisted sedimentation during the peak wet weather events. So the chemical dosing would only come on when the flow rates exceed that 2 times average dry weather flow threshold, or we're only treating 2.5% of the flow. Under option 2, the wet weather treatment option, under this option, we'd include the high rate wet weather treatment, we'd include the chemically enhanced primary treatment option, but then we'll also provide a bypass around the bioreactor and secondary clarifier, and then we'd add a tertiary filter. So during wet weather, the peak flows greater than that 2 times average dry weather flow would be diverted around the biological treatment and go to the filter, and then it would be the blended filtered bypass as well as the secondary effluent that would go to the outfall. So yeah, this option, what I wanted to point out here was that what we're doing here is we're shaving off those peaks that the secondary treatment option or secondary treatment train would see. So that's how we're able to, that's the benefit, is we're reducing the peak flows during those, the peak flows during wet weather events. In this slide, I just wanted to show the tertiary filter that is kind of marketed for this purpose. So it's in this case, it's the Aquastorm. So it's a series of discs, and it's kind of a cloth media that so that each disc is covered with a cloth media, and the media as well as the filtration system is designed specifically for wet weather treatment. So wastewater that's had some infiltration that's been affected by clean water. And the effective pore size of the disc filters is 5 microns. So as a consequence, it's able to achieve very good suspended solids removal as well as good BOD removal. And the chart on the right is the average of, it's about 24 pilot or full-scale facilities that are represented by this chart. And on average, they're seeing TSS, so suspended solids removal, above 80%, and BOD removal that is around 60%. So very good treatment with this filtration technology. So this became the basis for this particular for assessment of this particular option. And what we wanted to point out here is that the filtration system would treat the entire effluent flow stream. So even dry weather as well as wet weather events. So because of that, on an annual average basis, the effluent quality will be higher because the effluent is being filtered year round. So before bringing this forward, we want to do some modeling just to ensure that based on the technology that we identified and this approach of blending, that this option would meet the regulatory objectives. So this just kind of illustrates how we approached the modeling. So we took some at the top, some rain events, some inflow events that we've seen historically in the record, and we added it to the dry weather wastewater to get a combined inflow that more than represents the peaks that you see in the system. So we wanted to see peak hour flows more than 4 times average dry weather, and peak day flows that are more than 3 times, and to be able to see sustained flows that are greater than that 2 times average dry weather, really to really push the boundaries and try and essentially break the model. And the results of this analysis are summarized here. So on the right are the output from the process model, and they do all the results are well below the regulatory objectives. So for a BOD, we get a monthly average. We forecast a monthly average of 11 milligrams per liter, and the monthly average is the regulatory requirement is 25. For TSS, the monthly average or the monthly average for the modeled average was 6.1 compared to the requirement for 25. And the peak day requirement under the regulation, under the permit is 45. So the BOD, as you can see here, is just a little bit below 25. And TSS is quite a bit lower because, as we saw, the filter is much better at removing TSS. It's a little below 12. So
We
based
do have a
on
question, Piero.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll just
Okay.
interrupt you for a moment and go over
Perfect.
to Director McCollum.
Yeah, just a quick one. Could you expand on what those acronyms, the BOD and the TSS, are and what the
okay.
difference between them is?
Yes, good. I was going to put that in, and then it was more of a so yes, BOD or biological oxygen demand is a characteristic of wastewater that represent if you were to put the wastewater into a freshwater environment or a saltwater environment, it imparts, so it basically promotes the growth of bacteria in effect, and as a consequence, it has those bacteria bugs. They're going to impart. They're going to want oxygen, so they pull oxygen out of the water column, and as a consequence, they deplete the water column of oxygen, and that creates problems for fish to live in that. So that becomes a primary characteristic of wastewater. And then the TSS is the suspended solids. So just the particulate, anything bigger than 0.45 microns is considered suspended solids. These two features are like the CBOD captures the kind of the impact to the environment, as well as TSS. That in some cases the two are related. So there's a portion of the TSS that is also BOD. That is, if you were to introduce it to a freshwater or saltwater environment, it will create or promote the growth of bacteria and deplete the water column of oxygen.
Thanks for that. Please carry on.
Okay. And just to kind of finish off that discussion, those are the two criteria that are regulated under the current permit, the BOD and TSS, and very common across BC to use those as the basis for regulatory objectives and performance of treatment plant. So process model suggests that indicates that we're with this wet weather treatment strategy is well below what the regulatory objectives require. So we were able to kind of then justify moving that forward to assess the cash flow. So based on the population, the service population projections for the treatment plant, we wanted to establish, okay, under the baseline condition, at what point do you need to upgrade the various unit processes, and then compare that against the two options that we're considering. And we took it out to 2060. That's the time frame that we're using for planning. So in the next three slides, I'm just kind of illustrating the staging plan graphically, just for simplicity. So this first one is the baseline option. So in order to meet the year 2060 service population, we're looking at 6 primary clarifiers, 4 bioreactors, and 6 secondary clarifiers. And this approach or this upgrade requirement is not that different than what's been identified historically. So we're just kind of reaffirming that with the analyses that we've done. And again, what we see when we do these analyses is that really the requirement for upgrading of primary clarifiers and secondary clarifiers is being driven by the peak hydraulic loading, so the wet weather flow in effect. So what happens if we introduce that the CEPT, the chemically enhanced primary treatment, so increasing the capacity of the primary clarifiers? We see that when to get to 2060, we actually only now need 5 primary clarifiers. And furthermore, rather than having to have an upgrade, having a 4th primary clarifier by 2030, we're able to push that out to 2040. So we're deferring by adding this, some chemical addition. We're able to defer upgrades of the 4th primary clarifier and 5th primary clarifier, and then the 6th one would come after 2060. And the other feature of this is because we're not changing the flows to the biological, to the bioreactor and secondary clarifier, we're not changing the flows. The secondary clarifier upgrade requirements does not change when compared to baseline. So that's but we do have the benefit of the primary clarifier deferral. And with option 2, so we get the benefit of the chemically enhanced primary treatment, deferral of primary clarifiers. But because we're deferring, we're diverting those peak flows, we're diverting them around the biological reactor and the secondary clarifiers. We're able to control the flows to secondary clarifiers. We're also able to reduce or defer again the requirement for secondary clarifiers. So to meet the 2060 time horizon, we only need 4 primary clarifiers compared to the 6 for baseline and 5 primary clarifiers. However, in order to, and this is what we wanted to test, we do need to, in order to get this started, we need to build a tertiary filter. So we need to introduce the tertiary filter. It has a cost. And so what impact does that have to the cash flow for the, to 2060? That ultimately is the question we were trying to answer with this next slide. So we developed cash flow, did the cost estimates based on a class 5 level of detail. And we didn't include upgrades that we know will be common to all of the options. So the solids treatment isn't going to change regardless of the options that are selected, as well as the staging of that. And we need to introduce some splitter boxes for primary effluent and mixed liquor. And there's a need for bioreactor improvements and UV disinfection, and that will occur regardless of which option is selected. So we excluded that, and so we just want to see what the relative differences of the NPV will be. So the relative differences won't change whether those common upgrades are introduced or not. And so the wet weather treatment, option 2, wet weather treatment with the chemically enhanced primary treatment, is considerably less. It's almost $20 million less than baseline, and even with the requirement for the tertiary filter by 2030. We didn't include O&M costs as part of the analysis. Each option has trade-offs. So by, like in the baseline, for example, you're introducing more infrastructure, and that's going to necessitate more labor costs and may have slightly lower power costs than say the operate like consumables costs when you compare it against option 1 with the chemically enhanced primary treatment. But the SEP, because you're kind of making better use of your existing infrastructure, the labor costs are expected to be the same as current or lower. So there are these trade-offs that we think won't change the analysis.
And O&M is operation and maintenance, is it?
Correct. Yes, I'm sorry
Thanks.
for that. So final slide, just to kind of summarize the results and findings. So what's clear is that implementing the chemically enhanced primary treatment increases the primary clarifier capacity and does defer upgrades. So it's a relatively low cost way to defer those primary clarifier upgrades. And if you divert around the biological treatment flows that are more than 2 times average dry weather flow to an effluent filter, blend it with mainstream flow, it's also filtered, that blended stream will meet the regulatory objectives. And so, yeah, again, by limiting the peak flows, upgrades to primary or to secondary clarifiers is reduced considerably when you compare it against the baseline. And yeah, one of the features of this wet weather consideration is that even though you need the tertiary filtration, you need to incorporate and implement that kind of prior to 2030. The cost of the tertiary filtration is more than offset by the savings in deferred upgrades. And yeah, one of the other features of having a tertiary filtration system that's filtering your entire effluent flow is that your quality is going to be improved on an average annual basis. And so this does 2 things. It means that your UV disinfection system that you're going to implement is going to be a little bit more efficient, so a little bit less power cost. And part of the work that we're doing now is to assess what the implication will be by in terms of UV disinfection requirements with and without filtration. And then with filtration under the regulation, you're able to reuse that effluent. It has a broader range of uses that you can use it for on site or if required off site. So with that is the last slide. Of I'd be happy to take questions if.
Thanks very much, Piero. And we do have a question or comment from Director Swift. Whoops.
Well, thank you for your presentation. I'm just wondering if any of these have any impact on odor.
The odor won't change. So thinking, no, there would be, right? So I'm trying to think where the worst of the odor is from the sludge stream. So what happens is, right now, as we saw in this photo, all of the primary clarifier is an odorous unit process. So the way it's been designed is with these fiberglass covers, and the headspace, as you can see from these ducts, are exhausting the headspace. So that's how these are used to control odor. Secondary clarifiers are not known as, nor the biological reactors are not known as odorous unit process. Typically, it's from the sludge stream. So it'll be the dewatering, the sludge thickening, and those are processes that will also be upgraded, but that's a separate set of upgrades that we'll document.
Thanks for that, Director McCollum.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for the presentation and the report. Yeah, I mean, this approach makes a lot of sense the way it's been laid out. In terms of doing infrastructure planning, it's rare that we have an option to address kind of the highest needs in a different way. often we just have to kind of build to whatever we perceive as the maximum need. So having a way to work around that makes sense. It seems to me that this issue is probably replicated in just about every waste treatment system on the BC coast. Is this a pretty standard approach now to dealing with these storm flows?
So with the advent of this tertiary filtration system, it's becoming more common. So the McLaughlin Point wastewater treatment plant, so services the Victoria CRD, is based on this concept. So it diverts around kind of at some threshold. It diverts around, but it's different. It's a different process because it needs to be more compact, but it essentially does the same thing. It's a high rate ballasted settlement process, and then there's tertiary filtration. The Northwest Langley wastewater treatment plant, which is currently being upgraded by Metro Vancouver, will operate in the same way. So it'll have a diversion around the biological reactor to tertiary filtration.
Thanks for that. And could I just ask another question? So
Yeah.
on those model charts that you provided that showed the dry flows and then the projection of storm flows, I'll call them. I think you had a different term for it. You provided the expected average for a month, but then it's maximum per day for the regulation. And I just wanted to confirm that it's kind of two different measurements. So are we confident that we would still meet the maximum day, even with that monthly average, that those two things, because we could still meet the average and have days where we're not meeting it. So just wondering if you can expand on that.
That's why we did this process modeling. So we did a dynamic simulation, which required us to develop like a month-long set of hydrographs in order to assess that very question. Like we wanted to be sure. So each of these peaks, so this wasn't random. I didn't randomly kind of just threw them on the month. I set it up so that each of these peaks, the maximum peak where you get the 4 times average dry weather flow, occurs at different times during the day. So in the first one, you can see it occurs in the early morning. The second one is midday, and the third one is the latter part of the day. In order to kind of, and what we see here is that like we're getting flows that more than exceed the characteristics of the inflow to the plant. So trying to really push the boundaries, and still we're not right. So and again, like the question around BOD and TSS, we're getting good removal rates with the tertiary filtration. My concern was, how does the BOD, because some of it is soluble and will get through the tertiary filter, how does that end up in the effluent? And you can see we're still well below the 45. So we've done everything we can to be super conservative in the modeling, and we still come out to be well below the 45.
That's really reassuring to hear. Thanks for expanding on that. And I just had one last question.
If you can hurry, please.
Okay. The 13 million of capital in 2030, is that essentially the bypass and the tertiary filter or is there other costs in that 2030?
So this, so the 2030 would be the tertiary filter, and also doing upgrades to the bioreactor. So the bioreactors, part of the performance, part of all this kind of hinges on getting a handle on the performance of the bioreactor, which currently, right. So that was part of the motivation for having Glenn Dagger on as the process optimization expert to come in and figure out ways to get better sellability of sludge, because ultimately that's the driver for capacity of the mainstream treatment process is the secondary clarifier, and getting sellability under control is key to the plan that we've it's an assumption of the plan that we develop. So if you can't, and we believe it's possible, and so we have some options to run with. One of them is to improve the aeration system. We think that a big part of what is driving the poor sellability of sludge is it's not that it's poor aeration, it's that the control of aeration in the bioreactor, if it were better, you could create conditions that deselect for bacteria that create these settlement issues. That's ultimately.
Thanks, Piero. I'm just going to interrupt you because
Yep,
we're a
tell me
little
out.
pressed for time, and Chris wants to make a comment on this.
Thank you, Chair. And just to expand on Piero's answer to the Director's question, so Piero's been focused on the wet weather treatment component of the coming upgrades. There are significant other components as well. So the current financial plan has $46 million in it for upgrades that would occur at the same time as part of the same upgrade. Yeah.
Thanks. Good questions. And we'll go to Director Minions and then Director Cole Hamilton, and then we'll try to move on. Thank you.
Sorry, I double clicked. Thanks, Chair. Just a quick follow-up, and it's very similar to Melanie, Councillor McCollum's question, but how long has this technology been around for? Two other places were mentioned, but for the wet treatment and the SEPT, is this something that's been happening for a lot of years and the data kind of can be relied on heavily, or is this somewhat of a new technology?
No, SEPT has been around for a long time. So the use of polymer coagulant has been around it's a well-established technology. The idea of tertiary filtration has also been around for a considerable amount of time. What's different is that there are now products that have evolved to be specifically for. So tertiary filtration disc filters have been around since probably for about 25 years in that order.
Is that enough detail, Director?
That's enough. Thank you.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks very much. And my apologies for being rude.
No.
But,
I understand.
We'll go to Director Cole Hamilton online.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chair. Just briefly, I just wanted to get a sense, given this kind of limiting factors, we're looking at projecting flows 35 years into the future. I was wondering if I could just get a sense of what confidence we have in the projections that we have.
Yes, that is a very good question. And the way I would understand, the way that I would answer that is that it's really hard to predict the future. However, what we have is, I think we've got a good basis for planning. So we used, as part of the flow projections, the work that's been done by the regional district on to address the bill, the new bill, was it 44? For the removal of single family housing. There was a housing needs assessment that was done. So we have very good planning that was done for population projections. To go out to 2060, it becomes just, right, so you're not going to upgrade unless the population is there. So what we're doing is we're using this forecast as a way to assess options. But the way that you would do it in practice is that you would monitor the flow and the loading to your treatment plant, and you would compare it against this projection. And if you saw it was growing faster, which would surprise me, then you would have to accelerate the upgrade sequence. But if your loading isn't happening as fast, so every 10 years, every 5 to 10 years, you would reassess the population. And also reassess the timing of upgrades. So it's a starting point for planning and for implementation. So we're using.
Thanks for that.
Okay.
Anything further, Director Cole Hamilton?
Briefly, if it's possible, I was more meaning in terms of projection of flows in terms of climate change, storm sewer, that sort of thing. If there's a really quick answer on that, that would be appreciated.
Ooh, yeah, with climate change, yeah, my thinking is that what we have here is conservative. So we've taken existing kind of inflow characteristics and projected that. If you can get a handle on your I&I, then it'll come down, in which case your infrastructure requirements are going to decrease. The loading, the wastewater loading isn't going to change. So what we see is like in North America, wastewater loading on a per capita basis is very uniform. It's in BC especially. So I don't expect that to change. Unless
Thanks very
we
much.
also,
Much appreciated.
Yep.
I think we've had good questions. Director Cole Hamilton, your hand is still up, but I'm assuming you're satisfied. All right. Is anyone opposed to receipt? Receipt is carried, and we do have a recommendation. Moved Grant, seconded McCollum. Further questions or comments? Anyone opposed? The recommendation is carried. Thank you so much, Piero. We really
Thank you.
appreciate your
Yeah, you're
detailed explanations and your work on this along with Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to item number 3, apportionment of 2025 sewer municipal levy. A motion for receipt of the report, please. Move Grant, seconded Minions. Any further, or over to Chris?
Sorry, just through the chair, just very briefly, this is an annual report that comes through, reporting out on last year's flows for the basis of allocation of this year's municipal levy. It also includes the last several years of numbers, and there aren't any trends to report. So more of the same.
Thanks for that. Seeing no questions, is there anyone opposed to receipt? That's carried. We have item number 4, the sandy dump options update. Receipt, please. Moved Grant, seconded Swift. Staff, over to Chris again.
Sure. Thanks. Through the chair again. Yeah, this report provides an update on work towards development of a CVSS sandy dump facility. So as directed last year, and after consulting with municipal staff on the scope, we worked with McElhaney to undertake an assessment of sites. So they developed a long list. We worked with them to narrow that down just on the basis of local knowledge. And as the remaining sites were located within Courtenay, we met directly with City of Courtenay staff. And unfortunately, each of those shortlisted sites were eliminated from further consideration due to a range of criteria that are summarized in the report, but including capacity constraints with existing sewer collection systems, conflicts with active transportation corridors, proximity to residents, traffic impacts, that type of thing. So given these results, we are refocusing on private property as being probably the remaining kind of last remaining option for siting a facility of this type. So we're working with McElhaney to undertake another review, looking for private properties that's suitable that meet the criteria. And also we've just issued a request for expression of interest, putting a call out to private landowners and businesses to see if there's any interest in partnering with the CVRD on delivering this type of facility. So we hope to have better news to report, some progress to report at a subsequent meeting. But at this point, given the difficulty in identifying a site, we're not likely to have a facility in place for 2025. So yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Chris. Questions or comments from commission members? I will just ask Chris if there's been any outreach to Comox First Nation in relation to their IR2 property as a possibility. Yes,
yeah, we have met several times and discussed and had more recent discussions with the KFN about that site, and they opted to not proceed with the discussions, just given the amount of traffic that would likely be attracted to that site, which is at the end of the day a private campground. Sure, thanks for that.
All right, seeing no questions or comments, anyone opposed to receipt? That's carried. And we have item number 5, the sewer conveyance project construction dashboard. Moved by Grant, seconded by McCollum, and looks like we have staff coming up to speak.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Cole Mackinson will be introducing the dashboard and available for any questions. Cole.
Thank you, through the chair. This is our monthly dashboard or update for the project. Currently, we've spent 42 million of the allocated 96 million budget. We're about 58% complete of the force main, so we've kind of passed our halfway milestone, which has been a great achievement. If we scroll down to the schedule, so things. Pump station construction is behind on schedule. They've had issues with the ground dewatering. We had a way forward last week and it didn't work, so they're reassessing and should have a new plan coming up for next week. At the Comox pump station, we're scheduled to start that this spring and summer construction. There's some updates on the engagement later in the dashboard. The force main from the pump station to Bayside, we're midway through construction and just popped out onto Comox Road this week. The force main from Jane Place to Bayside, we're moving well along. We're kind of just at Beach right now. We're just doing some pressure testing on this last section, and then we'll be moving towards Rodello. Force main Jane to Lazo has been complete last year. And then force main in that one section of Lazo to Torrance is scheduled to mobilize back in May. And then we'll have project commissioning in 2026. So we can just go to the next page. In the design bid build, that's wake work and moving through the town of Comox. They're focusing on a lot of the town of Comox upgrades currently in the downtown core, a lot of sidewalks, curbing, infrastructure upgrades, sewer kind of going between Ellis and Wilcox, a lot of retaining walls and upgrades there. And so that's going well. We've got our first paving date scheduled in a couple of weeks in March on the east side of Beaufort. And then we'll be continuing paving all throughout the summer. In the design build, we've done our installation through the Farm View and Scott Road, and we're doing a lot of archaeological work, working with Baseline and Comox First Nations guardians through that. We just started one-way traffic on Monday, and so far we haven't had too many complaints on it. I think it flowed fairly well yesterday, but definitely it'll be changes to the public over the next couple of weeks. We're monitoring a lot of traffic counting on back road there, so we're actively keeping tabs on that.
We'll ask for a report from Director Minions as to how it is getting back to Comox this afternoon.
And then Comox Pump Station, we had engagement in mid-February with the residents down there. There's a number of options provided for fencing, finishing on the generator building, landscaping, and the awning on top. And so the residents all voted, and option one shown there was chosen by the majority of the residents. And so we're proceeding with the town of Comox on permits for this section, and then we should be starting this spring and summer for construction. Open to questions.
Thanks very much, Director Grant.
Yeah, thank you. So I noticed today when I drove into Courtney that we had two-way traffic going. I was fully expecting one-way traffic. So is that fully implemented? Like I'm hearing people say it's working pretty good. The odd ones saying not, but for the most part, people are liking it, but I'm just not sure if the plan's fully implemented or not.
Yeah, so on the engaged page, we're only in one unidirectional from Farmview, where we've walked onto the force main to the pump station to the 17th Street Bridge. That's the unidirectional. And so we can allow everything kind of on Dyke Road and Comox First Nations to flow back and forth to the town of Comox. But then later in the year, once Wakeward pops up on Comox Ave, there's going to be sections of unidirectional. And once we kind of go from within Comox First Nations, then there'll be other sections of unidirectional. So as we go through the construction project, we're trying to limit impact, so it's not all unidirectional. So we're trying to keep the communities connected as much as possible. Yeah.
Further questions or comments from commission members? Appear to be none. Thanks very much, Cole, to you and your crew and to all the staff involved. Is there anyone opposed to receipt? That's carried, and we'll take a motion for termination. Move Grant, second Minions, all in favor? That's carried. Thanks very much, everyone.